Hello, we are live from my office here in Virginia. I'm Kristen DeBruycker here, and you are tuning into BJJ Fundamentals. We're going to continue with the mount position, but starting with some standing self-defense. And what I really love to do is when I can give you guys lots of solo drills or drills to kind of work on your own. I think there's a lot of like micro movements in Jiu-Jitsu that sometimes we don't have self-mastery of, and this just gives you the opportunity. And then I will show it to you on my training partner, Bear Drills, and he's going to help me out today. Also, as always, if you have any questions, please write them in the comment section. Also, make sure you subscribe, like, and share the video. Hit that thumbs up button so that way it just kind of helps me out to get a little bit more traffic. I'm at about 700 subscribers right now. If I get about 300 more, I can start doing YouTube lives with my phone, which is going to make it a lot easier for me to do it in other places other than my computer. Maybe I can use an external mic. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, you can always consider becoming a patron on Patreon. The suggested pledge is about $5 a month, and that just helps me put out more content. Right now, I'm kind of averaging somewhere between 5 and 6 YouTube live classes a week, which is just a decent amount, but I like to do more videos. It's kind of tricky right now because here in Virginia, we are still like under quarantine. We go into phase 1 in mid-May, and with the standards that the governor put forth saying that all gyms have to be done classes outside, while this is going on, I will still be doing YouTube live classes to kind of help support people here in Virginia and all over the world to continue to train Jiu-Jitsu. The other thing I was going to say is that I'm also available for Zoom one-on-one lessons. So if that is something that you're interested in and you're more curious about kind of how do we do solo drills, how do you train on your own, and how do you train over video, I've kind of come up with kind of a system to do it. I've been doing a lot of Zoom one-on-one lessons, specifically with kids. So if that is something that you are interested in, please write in the comment section, and then we can start kind of having that discussion. And I can train anybody anywhere though too, which is really, really nice for me. So today, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we're going to start with here is we're going to start with what we call our footwork. So today we're going to be working on the P-Sau, or closing the gap to the T position. So we're just going to warm up with a little bit of movement, and then we're going to talk about footwork and kind of how to enter properly, things like that. Anyone who tunes into my YouTube live Thai classes know how much I care about this, because this is something that I'm very passionate about. Is that yes, 90% of all fights end up on the ground, but 100 start standing up. So as Jiu-Jitsu practitioners, we have to create a clinch. Okay, but how do we get there without taking a lot of damage? So sometimes the P-Sau, or the kick, is also referred to, I jokingly refer to it with my friend, as the 93, Royce Gracie, UFC 1. So there is times when it's being used, but I think Hickson gave me a little bit of insight on the practicality of it, but I also like to do it with a little bit of a Muay Thai JKD flair and understanding how we kind of break up footwork. So what we're going to warm up with first is just we did last week. We're going to warm up with a lateral transition. This is kind of the step that we use to get into the T position. So we're just going to review that first. We're going to start with our feet together. We take a step, we bend, and then go to the other side. Step, bend, and go to the other side. Now, as you get comfortable with this, you can make it wider. Now, the goal is not to and then go. We want to try to make it as soft as possible and as smooth as possible. Now, as you get comfortable, we're going to step to the side. And then back. Step to the side. And back. Step to the side. And back. Step to the side and back. Very similar to the T position. So once we've done about 5 each side, we're going to start warming up with our footwork. So our footwork today is we're going to get into what we call our fighting stance, whatever that is for you. Now, because I used to fight MMA, I have one stance for everything. It just makes it easier, so I don't have to be This is my grappling stance. This is my striking stance. I like having one. So what we're going to do is have our feet together. 1, 2, 3 and a half. And the reason why I do it like this is because it's always the same then. Just like when I set up for a deadlift, I'm always doing it the same way. So depending on like, for grappling, typically you put your strong foot forward. Because I'm a striker, I put my strong foot back. So it just depends on kind of what you're trying to accomplish. So 1, 2, 3 and a half. And the reason I stand here kind of like my feet on train tracks is, one, it's very easy for me to make base because I don't want to stand completely sideways. It's not a good grappling stance. But also, if my feet are kind of on train tracks, I don't have to worry as much about losing my base. Then I can bend my legs and kind of have this like kind of 50-50 stance. But I don't want to be heavy on my heels. I want kind of the weight on the balls of my feet. I should be able to slide a dollar bill underneath my heels at any time. So what we're going to work on first is called a step and slide. So we're going to have our hands up in kind of our defensive posture. As a jiu-jitsu guys, like, my friend, I'm going to fight you. Like things like that. You know, this is very aggressive. This is very defensive. So just let everyone know. So we're going to step and slide. Step and slide. Step and slide. Step and slide. Now, for those guys who have been into any of my striking classes where I go into this in a little more depth, we're going to do it in like a plus sign shape. So it's going to be forward, side, side, and then back. And the reason we step and slide, because we don't want to get in the habit of crossing our feet or stepping too wide where we don't have base anymore. So we just want to maintain that base the whole time. So step and slide, step and slide, step and slide, step and slide. So forward, side, side, back. Forward, side, side, back. Okay. And the reason why we want to be comfortable with this, because closing the gap to the T position is really dependent on your footwork. So I want to talk about range management. So typically when I do this in like a class, we'll do this as like a partner drill, as like almost like a mirror drill. So if you were doing it with me, if I move forward, you want to move backwards. When I move back, you want to move forward and then mirror me and mirror me. Because in jiu-jitsu, but in all self-defense, the two safest places to be are all the way out or all the way in. So all the way out is about 2 arms distance. That's a safe distance where you're just outside of range where the person can't kick you or hit you. Okay, and then all the way in would be the clinch. Those are the 2 safest places to be when we're talking about self-defense. So we're trying to duplicate that right now without a partner. So working on this step and slide is really going to help you. So step and slide, step and slide. And I'm doing it in like a kind of a plus sign shape. But what I'm not doing is stepping and I leave this foot in the bucket. The back foot always has to come to the party. So making sure we always have our feet underneath us. And this is something that's very, very important that I think a lot of people who play jiu-jitsu on the ground don't work on the footwork as far as standing is concerned, which is just as important. Because when you're on your feet, it's about your feet. If your footwork is wrong, nothing else is going to feel right. So the next thing we're going to be working on is a quarter turn or a lateral step. So if this is 1, 2, 3, I'm going to take a lateral step almost like I'm walking. Then I'm going to pivot. So this is kind of breaking down a little bit of almost like the T position as well. So I step and then pivot. Step, pivot, step, pivot. But also when we do some of our entries in jiu-jitsu, we always step kind of forward almost like we're walking. But notice when I walk, I don't walk like this. I want to always maintain this stance when I take that step and enter, then I pivot. Step, pivot, step, pivot. In Kali, this is referred to as the right lateral triangle. Or you can say lateral step, or you can say quarter turn. That's it. Okay? So our 2 types of footwork, step and slide. Quarter turn. Okay? Those are 2 different types of footwork that you can just train on your own, even without striking, just to make sure your footwork is correct. Now let's talk about how we do the peace out. So the peace out is a side kick. I want to be very clear. It is a type of side kick, but it's not like your traditional like karate chamber and snap that out. Okay, still got it. So it's to the leg, and Hickson really clarified this to me that the side kick, it's at an angle. Okay, so your foot is pointed up a little bit, almost kind of got like a little bit of that Filipino flair because they do a lot of kind of stomps that way. But also the idea is that I'm not just kicking, I'm putting weight on the person. So when I'm going ahead and put my leg there, it has a slight bend to it. The idea is I kick the person so it puts lots of weight on the leg so they can't back out of the pressure. So that's the subtlety that people don't see in the peace out. So it's meant to actually almost like put your leg outside. So one of my favorite things to do is I do this in Thai, but it will also work in Jiu-Jitsu, is kind of put your foot on a wall and just kind of feel the weight. Kind of weight your weight on it. And so you could really feel it. So you get that resistance there, and that's going to really help. I'll show it from the other angle. So my angle, my toes are up slightly, and I want to feel the weight underneath it. But notice I still have really good balance here. I don't want to just fall over. So I'm kind of maintaining that pressure there. This is how I used to practice my foot jabs in Muay Thai when I first started. So if you don't mind putting your feet on the wall, put the foot on the wall, and then you just kind of feel the weight there. Okay, feel the weight. Feel the weight. Now I would recommend do about 5 each side, just so you like really feel that. Okay. So once you feel pretty comfortable with the peace out, let's talk about context. So for all my JKD guys out there, the entry for close the gap to the T position is attack by drawing. It is a counter attack. So the idea behind it is I'm dealing with an aggressive opponent. I take 2 steps back, 1, 2. On the 3rd step is when I enter with the peace out. So I'm still entering on pain, but I'm using me going back to draw my opponent towards me. So that way they want to kind of close the distance already, really trying to hit me. And then I can kind of crash. So I go back, they keep coming forward, and then I go in. So that makes it kind of easier. It's very much a counter-fighting perspective, which I love. I love counter-fighting. So the idea is when we're drilling it at home, the footwork is we're going to have our hands up in our defensive posture, and you can even hold your head as long as you can see. So this is almost like a pillar block in Thai. We're going to go back 1, 2. Now when I do the 3rd one, I'm going to step, peace out to crash. Okay? So one more time. Back up, hands up, or I'm almost in like my pillar block position. 1, 2, I step, and then crash. The biggest mistake I see a lot of people make is that when they crash, they try to just grab the person right away, which is not what we're trying to accomplish. We're not trying to just grab the person to get to the clinch. We want to crash. So we want to enter hard, then wrap the person up in the T position. Okay, this is very important. What I see a lot of people do instead is they try to just grab the clinch. But if you just try to reach and grab and engage the clinch that way, nothing's protecting your face. So we need to enter first. And you almost want to be like a battering ram. I want to hit the person with my arms. When I feel that contact, that is when I engage the clinch, whether it's the T position, the rear clinch, doesn't matter. But it's really important that you feel that contact and then engage. So hands up. We move. I'm going to make sure I have enough space. Run a wall. Hands up. 1, 2, 3, I crash. Now once I crash, then I can move into the T position where I bite the arm, grab the hip, listen to the heart. Everything we've worked on in the previous weeks. So before we were working on takedowns from the T position, now we're talking about how do we enter. Because entering, I think, in most arts, is more difficult than what you do when you're already there. And this is, I think, a really important link that a lot of jiu-jitsu practitioners should really practice. Because if you want to engage the clinch and get the fight to the ground, you have to get to the clinch. Unless you're like a good wrestler, you got to practice it. And I love to do it off of striking personally. So hands up, okay. Kind of in that battering ram, pillar block. 1, 2, 3, and then you can move into the T position, okay? So that is close the gap to the T position with the peace out or the 93, okay? So this would be a great time for me to take questions or comments about how to drill this at home. I just recommend shadow boxing it because once you can shadow box it, because I love shadow boxing, because I am a Thai boxer, And I've done Kali as well. We do Carenza. It's very important that you have self-mastery of your own body before you try to do it on a person. And then you're going to have also great control with the peace out, so you don't like lock out someone's knee by accident when you're practicing eventually when you get back into the gym. So are there any questions so far on the peace out or closing the gap to the T position? If there are not, we are going to move on to something I'm so excited about teaching today. We're going to teach the armbar from mount today, which I'm super excited about as far as submissions are concerned, because of all the things that okay, so I have a great question before we continue. So the question is, do I prefer the T position hip throw or the P position sit down throw? This is the thing. It is completely dependent on what the opponent does. So even if I prefer the T position sit down throw, it doesn't work unless the person is giving it to me. Okay, so just a quick reminder. If we're in the T position and the person's hips are back, they're letting me do the hip throw. If the person is straight up and down or blocking the hip throw by bringing their hips in to block it, then I do the sit down throw. So it doesn't matter what I want to do, it matters what I can do. And that's the difference. And so I had a great instructor who gave me perspective on this. What indicator is my opponent giving me? If my opponent is giving me an indicator, that is the one that I should take. I don't want to be married to one move and be like, this is the only one I should do. What I should do is pay attention to what my opponent is telling me to do. So that's based on feel. So, but they can articulate this kind of a little bit with the fundamental curriculum, or the Pedro, Sauer, white to blue curriculum, which is what I teach. And there are certain times to do them. And that's just something that you got to build up over time. Okay. So, but that was a great question. Hopefully I answered that sufficiently. So now let's talk about the armbar. So I love teaching the armbar without a partner because there's so many moving pieces in this that I think are great, or micro movements that you can do on your own with even out a partner. And this is actually something that's really difficult a lot of times for beginners to do because one, they're too nice. They don't want to put weight on people. And two, there's a lack of certain mobility or movement patterns they're not comfortable with. And so I'm going to show you a ton of solo drills today. That one, if you're an instructor, you can teach your students and do them as warm-ups. Two, this is actually how I break it down for kids, so I know it works for 5-year-olds. And then three, just because for your own mobility and your own movement practice, it's just going to make you move better. Or if you need movement breaks throughout the day, if you're working at home, it's just going to be great for your hips and everything like that. So we're going to start with something really simple. This is a side bent sit, and I'm going to turn the camera down a little bit so everyone can see what I'm doing on the floor. Because this is going to be, I'm so excited about teaching this. So this is a side bent sit. I see a lot of times people do it as like a 90-90. The reason why we're doing it as a side bent sit is because I want to duplicate the S mount as best as I can. The goal is to have both of my sit bones on the ground so you can tell kind of where your hip mobility is at. So we're going to start with a really simple transition, and then we're going to move into a more difficult one. So the first side bent sit transition is we're going to balance here without using our hands. We're going to bring our legs in front of us. 1, 2, and then switch to the other side. Now, I know a lot of people will lean and use a lot of momentum to do this. I see Jiu-Jitsu guys do that all the time. If you really want to make your movement better, use your core, engage, and here. And try to do it as smooth as possible and as slow as possible, because that is going to help you long term. So it's not about getting the rep done. Jiu-Jitsu guys are like, oh, but does it work? Like, that's all they care about. I'm like, as efficiently as possible. And if your hips and your core are stronger, you're going to thank me later. So again, try not to just like lean, because then when you start leaning, using momentum, you're not building that strength. So once you've done about 5 each side, we're going to move into our next transition. This is a personal favorite of mine. And then we're going to add a stretch. So the next transition is a little more difficult. I used to teach it all the time in my fundamental class. So we're going to keep our feet planted, we're going to do what, like a lot of people do this as a 90-90. We're going to open our legs up and then go to the other side. But notice I did not move my feet. My feet stayed planted, and I use internal and external rotation of my hips to help kind of move my legs. This also will help protect your knees because your hips are going to move and they won't rely on the torque from your knees. Because your knees get it from both ends. They get it from if you have like inflexible ankles or your hips are tight, all the tension is going to be on your knees. So we want to try to make sure we're as mobile as possible so we prevent injuries when we get back into the gym. So we're going to open up and then other side. Now, if you are really tight or you have weak hips, if you have to put your hands behind you to do this, that's fine, okay? But the goal is to not use your hands, transition, and then transition, okay? So you're gonna do about 5 each side there. At any point in time, if you have questions about any of the movements, please let me know. Kids make this look easy. I'm just gonna tell you this right now. And you'll find some sticky spots. You'll find some parts of, ooh, I'm kind of tight there. Or, ooh, I'm kind of weak there. And when the more you can kind of feel that, you kind of can work through that range of motion. Okay. So once you get done with that side bend sit transition, we're going to do a side bend sit transition to cross kneeling. So what this looks like is we're going to drive our hips forward. Now, what I mean is up. What a lot of people do is going to go here and then drive. Again, we're using momentum then. I really want you to isolate the movement and think about leading with your belt forward. Does everyone see that? And then back down with control. Now we're going to transition. Drive my hips forward and then back down. Transition. Drive our hips forward and back down and then transition. Drive our hips forward, back down, and then transition. If you want, you can also add a stretch and lean over your knee at the bottom if you want to stretch your hips a little bit or your glute. Come back up, drive, lower, transition, stretch, up, and then back down. Okay, now all this might seem really simple, but this is stuff that you can just do at home to make your jiu-jitsu in general better. Because I notice a lot of times, especially when I talk to like higher ranking guys, they just miss jiu-jitsu because they miss the sparring. They miss the rolling. They miss the immediate kind of, well, you can't do jiu-jitsu without a partner. I'm like, I understand what you're saying from a functional standpoint, but we have to have self-mastery of our own movement. If you cannot move correctly without someone on top of you, how are you going to move correctly with someone on top of you? So this is, I want you to kind of change the way you look at jiu-jitsu and treat it like any martial art. So now we're going to drive our hips forward and we're going to do a get up now. So this is kind of simulating bringing the leg around the head, so you have to isolate. So I'm going to drive my hips up in this cross kneeling. Now I stabilize on this knee and I'm going to bring this leg up and around and come to my knee here. Now this is the hard part. We're going to reverse the motion. So I take my leg, I need to stabilize on this knee and then go back. You do it again. Other side. Cross kneeling. Drive the hips forward. Stabilize. Leg comes over. Now we got to reverse the motion. Reverse. Come back. Lower with control. Other side. Turn face another direction. Drive my hips forward. I'm going to stabilize on this knee. So I really got to make sure all my weight's on this leg, and so I can balance to stabilize here to get to my lunge. Then I'm going to stabilize again, reverse the motion, and then lower with control. It seems really simple. It's actually much more difficult than people realize if you do it correctly. So we're going to other side. Drive hips forward. Stabilize. Lunge. Stabilize. Reverse it with control. Lower with control, and then transition. So you're gonna do about 5 each side. And we should start like warming up those hips a little bit. It should feel pretty good. So up, stabilize. And then try really hard not to drag to come to the top, because that means you're really kind of lifting and stabilizing on that other leg, which is what we're gonna do an armbar anyway. So once you've done about 5 each side, okay, now we're gonna be moving into our next series of movements. This is like a squat series to the armbar movement. So the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna get into our squat stretch. Now, the biggest pet peeve of mine for jiu-jitsu guys is they compensate. I'm gonna turn my feet out. Well, let's try to turn our hips out. So what I want you to do is, if you have a slight turn in your knees, I want to drive my knees towards my pinky toes, bringing my hips back. And I want to keep my heels on the ground. This is something that a lot of people are missing in their jiu-jitsu. So we want to make sure. Now, if you have bad ankle flexibility, what I recommend is you use your elbows to push your knees out, sink into your ankle a little bit to kind of work on that ankle mobility. Like, I have really tight ankles, so I have to do this every day to really kind of get a good feel for this. So driving into that ankle, driving into that ankle, getting good mobility here. Now, after we feel pretty comfortable here, we're gonna do what we call a deep knee touch. Now, this is not the old school jiu-jitsu where we bring the hips inside. No, this is different. We're gonna drive our knee to the ground and this leg stays up. So we're going to kind of pivot until we're perpendicular. So I'm gonna lower this knee with control, active toes here. The other leg is up. Now I should be looking at this direction. Now this is the hard part. Now you gotta reverse the motion. So with control, come up, okay? So I'm gonna drive the knee down. Good ankle mobility here. Facing this direction. Isolate, bring this leg up. So drive the knee down. Good ankle mobility. Now bringing this ankle up with control. Now this is hard for me, so just take your time. So the big thing is that a lot of people don't have the strength in their feet yet, so this is a great way to kind of work on just your foot mobility as well and foot strength. So I'm driving my knee to the ground, and then this leg comes up. Okay, notice I'm trying to drive my knee to the ground really slow. So this is kind of showing you how you start to turn to make the S mount happen. Then come back up. So I drive the knee to the ground and then come back up. Drive the knee to the ground, deep knee touch, and then come back up. Drive the knee to the ground, deep knee touch, come back up. And this is a great precursor to the armbar movement that's in the fundamental curriculum, because if you cannot do this, the armbar movement is going to be very difficult. And then back up. So once you've done about 5 each side, if you need to take a rest, okay, you can go ahead and take a rest. So now that we've done our squat to our deep knee touch, now we're going to start working into our armbar movement. But another thing that you can do to kind of strengthen this is you can do what they call a frog hop in Gymnastica Natural, where if I'm in my squat, I can take my hands, and then when I get my hands here, I want to bring my legs past my hands. Okay, and that's going to kind of simulate kind of sliding up into the armbar. Again, and I'm a big proponent of not doing it as fast as possible, not doing it as like just get the rep done, but how do I make my movement as smooth as possible? Because we're not in resistance, we're not sparring it. So all of these movements that we did are great warm-ups. They're also great for isolating and finding the missing link kind of in your armbar. So now that we've done all this, let's do the armbar. So I'm gonna get bear drills over here. And I actually do not teach the armbar from mount anymore when I teach beginners. I start from a different position. Because what I found is, through years of teaching, and especially teaching kids, that if you cannot S-mount correctly, you can't armbar. Not effectively. So we're going to go ahead and try to kind of break this down a little bit, kind of reverse engineer it. So we're actually going to start, not from mount, but from standing. I know, it sounds crazy. So you don't need to see my face, it's okay. So we're gonna walk our feet up into the armpit of bear drills here. And the higher I am, the better. Now we're gonna get into our squat. Now if the partner's being a good partner, they'll have their arms up here. Now we're gonna Do all the movements, that micro movements that we did already, but now we're gonna do them on the dummy. Now we're gonna do our deep knee touch. Now notice I don't drop it, I drive it forward. That's what gives me the ability to drive the knee towards the ear. Now we're gonna duplicate that side bend sit by pointing our heel towards our opponent's ear. Look, it's just like the side bend sit. The only difference is I have active toes here. So I should be pretty perpendicular, and you can adjust yourself if you don't feel like you're perpendicular enough, which usually means that you didn't do the deep knee touch deep enough. So this should be pretty simple. So we're in our side bend sit. Now, if you remember, one of our side bend sit transitions is bringing the leg around. Now, to make it easier, when we hug this arm, we're gonna lean towards the knee. So you're gonna use a little bit of momentum just to like shift our weight to the other hip. Now we're gonna isolate this and bring the leg in front of us just like we did our transition. And we should end up just here. If you fall back when you do this, that means you don't have enough strength in that hip to balance here. Now notice I'm sitting really close to bear drills. I'm very upright. The arm is right here. It's pretty straightforward. Just kind of hang out here. This should be pretty comfortable. Okay, if this is not comfortable, that means we're missing some steps. Now we can go ahead and start working on the finish eventually. But if you don't get the setup, it doesn't matter. So again, we walk our feet up to the armpits. We squat. Now, deep knee touches the ear. Notice I'm pretty perpendicular here. Okay, now we're gonna transition. We gotta make this point to our side bend sit. So now I'm in like my side bend sit that we did earlier, or S mount. Pretty perpendicular here. Now, when I hug the arm, I wanna look over my knee. So this shifts my weight to this hip, which makes this leg light. So now we're gonna do that transition where we bring the leg around the head. Now, bear drills is a pretty big head, so forgive me. So now I'm gonna bring my heels towards me, pinch my knees together. I should be sitting up pretty tall here, not like this. Okay, having good posture. This is where you should end up, especially if you're teaching a beginner. You don't want them to go straight to the tap. You want them to feel really comfortable here. This is what we're looking for. So if all of this is right, the rest is gonna be easy. So now let's talk about for mount. When we add the mount setup, we're gonna do essentially that frog jump, or that in my kids' class I call them kangaroo hops. So if I want to armbar this arm, I'm gonna put my hands on the chest, one hand over, one hand under. Now I'm gonna pop up and drive my hips forward, just like that frog jump. Now once I do that frog jump, I'm in my squat already. Deep knee touch. Side bend sit. Now I'm in an S mount. Now I hug the arm, look over the knee. Now I'm gonna do that transition where I bring my legs in front of me. Now I'm right here. My feet are up, my heels are close to me. I'm gonna pinch. Now let's talk about the finish. Now when I do the arm bar, going down is not what creates the arm bar. It's the angle. So we wanna bring the pinky towards the legs. That's the best way to remember it, or the thumb up. But I like pinky towards the legs, it helps you remember it. So make sure I bring it across my hip and not in my groin. So I'm gonna hug it, like I'm basically sliding out a fire pole, and I bring the pinky towards the legs. And then what I wanna do is a hip bridge. So I bridge my hips up to finish. And that is the arm bar for mount. And the way I break it down, I will show a more advanced way after this. So just a real quick reminder, we're gonna put one arm over top, one arm underneath. Okay, pushing off of our opponent's chest. I don't have to worry about hurting bear drills, which is great. I'm gonna pop up, frog jump. Now I'm in my squat, okay? You should feel pretty comfortable here. I recommend if you don't feel comfortable with your heels on the ground in your squat, that's something, a mobility issue you should really consider fixing so you don't lead to injuries later. Now I'm gonna do my deep knee touch, perpendicular, side bend sit, heel towards my opponent's ear. Okay, so now I'm in kind of my side bend sit. Now we're gonna do kind of our transition. I look over the leg. That makes this leg light. We're gonna shave the leg around the head. You can push the face to make it easier. Feel comfortable here, pull our heels in, pinch our knees, bring the pinky towards the feet, and then hip bridge up to finish. And you'll notice the way I get back up to mount is just so I can rep out as many arm bars as possible. So that is going to be our fundamental armbar showing step by step. And hopefully I showed how our micro movements or our solo drills translate to doing a better armbar. Okay, so now I'm going to show just how I drill it now. So once you get to a certain level, the goal is
is to kind of, instead of frog jump up to a squat, is to go straight into your S mount. So once you get to a certain level, the goal is that once I get here, I want to slide straight into that S mount. You'll notice that I'm underneath the shoulder. My heel is pointed at Pedro's ear. Get active toes here. I'm already pretty high up. I'm very perpendicular. Then I can look over the knee, push the face, shave, and then sit back. So that's the next level of the drill. So if you would like to get more proficient with this at home, I recommend break it down first. And then after you get more comfortable with the movement, then you can go straight into your S mount. But always make sure your S mount is correct before you kind of do the armbar. And I always lean forward and towards the leg to bring the leg over the head. I see a lot of people sit back and try to bring the leg over the head, but you're going to lose that connection. So if you have a dummy at home, it's really great. But if you don't, all the solo drills we did earlier are just going to make your armbar or your jiu-jitsu better in general. And they're great micro movements just to practice at home. Like if you've been sitting for a period of time and you just need to move your hips and kind of take a break, you know, I would highly recommend just doing them. I don't know if you guys noticed this. This is actually my office. I don't have furniture. And the reason I don't have furniture is so that way periodically when I'm on my computer, I'm doing work and putting out content, I can get up and like do some movement from jiu-jitsu or just do some movement in general in my office fairly easily. So every like 25, 50 minutes, I try to get up and just kind of move a little bit. And that's going to help you when you get back into the gym, depending on where you live. So hopefully everyone found that the way I kind of taught the fundamental armbar helpful. This is a great time for me to take other questions, or if anyone would like to see anything again. If you're interested in more solo drills, I have solo drills on my Vimeo for sale. They're just like the solo drills foundations, like foundational movements that I think everyone should be master for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Hopefully they're helpful. And a lot of this comes from me teaching children for the last 10, 11 years. And kind of what I've been doing a lot with kids over Zoom. And so my theory is if a 7-year-old girl can do it, then an adult should do it. Okay, so are there any questions about anything we did today as far as close the gap to the T position, the P-Sau, or the armbar movements, or the armbar? Okay, so I have a great question. This is more of a setup question. Any suggestions for people who have their arms glued on the floor and makes it difficult to get out their arms? So this is when you have to remember, what is the person giving you? So if someone's like this and they're gluing their arms to the floor and you just can't do it, what you should be doing is choking them. So remember, don't do what you want, do what you can. So what I like to do for the armbar is I like to stick a hand in the collar. So not everything that I do is to submit people. Sometimes what I'm trying to do is just stop you from escaping, okay? So the big thing is that I always put the hand in the collar because I want you to defend the choke. I want you to do something, okay? So once I stick that hand in the collar, if they don't address that hand in the collar, I'm just gonna choke them. Sorry, like that's what I'm gonna go for. But most people try to UPA or try to defend the choke, and that's what starts to set up your armbar. So I'll show real quick just a setup that I really like, because I love the S mount. I use it to set up a bunch of stuff. I have this wonderful black belt that I train with back at HQ. Maybe some of you guys know him. His name is Mike Horahan, and he's got one of the nastiest mounts I've ever had the pleasure of feeling. So, but I've taken a lot of my mount game is inspired by what Mike does. So when I stick this hand in the collar and the person defends, I'm going to use my chest to push this arm across. That gives me space to slide my knee up into that deep knee touch. And then depending on what they do with this arm dictates whether I go to the S mount or the mounted triangle. So if this arm is up, then I go to the S mount. Now this hand that's in the collar, that's the one that can trap the arm fairly easily, and then I can set up to here. Okay, that's the one that I like to do. So that's just something that I really like. Okay, that's the one that I really like personally, and that's kind of my setup. So what I would recommend is attack by combination versus a direct attack. Because if you do a single direct attack, it's very easy to defend. So what I like to think of is every submission in jiu-jitsu is a position. And I just want to get control, and start taking like things away And once I take everything away, then it's a lot easier for me to finish somebody. So that's what I would focus on, is that use the collar choke to set up the S mount, not necessarily the arm bar. So I had another really great question. Any pointers for finishing the arm bar while still on top instead of leaning back? Yes. So if your S mount is very good, now personally speaking, I actually don't lean back for the arm bar. That's just how I teach it fundamentally. So once I get into this S mount, I might do it a little differently. So to finish it on top, I'm going to show a couple little finishes. So I'm in my S mount, everything's great. I can even go under the head and grab my own ankle to kind of like make it suck more. But we're not going to worry about that. So what I'm going to do is, instead of trapping with this arm, I'm going to trap with the near side arm, the one that's closest to my opponent's head. I base and lean towards the legs. Now I'm going to shave this around the head. My knee drops to the ground, and I'm going to extend my hips just like when I did that cross kneeling that we did earlier. I'm going to extend my hips and drive the person's head away to finish. Okay, this is how I would do it for self-defense. I'm just going to break the arm and get up. I do not like the idea against a bigger opponent about sitting back and then getting the ability to get back on top of me, especially if they can hit me. So that's one of the ways I do it. I also use the S mount to set up like a far side arm break, where I can dive inside and do like a straight arm lock to like a far side Americana. So all of these are great setups for like finishing arm bars on top. So I usually attack this arm first, so that way they're paying attention to this one. Then I'll finish with this guy last. Okay, so it's misdirection. Look over here. Just kidding. No, so that's kind of my personal favorite as far as finishing. But now we're getting into more like tactics. So in a fundamental class, just so because I got a lot of mixed levels of people watching. So if you're an instructor, I would recommend paying attention. You have technical questions and tactical questions. Technical questions are, what are the steps in the move to make my armbar super good and super efficient? That is what a fundamental class should be. Okay, is how to move your body correctly or efficiently. So little effort, big result. Tactical questions are, when do you do the move? What is the indicator, or what if this person does? Like, that's going to be your setups. Your when do I do it? Your fail safes. Like, okay, what if the person's a ninja, or what if, my head explodes? I don't know. You get a lot of what if questions in jiu-jitsu. So those are different types of questions that you have to address with your students, or, when I address with you guys. So just be aware when you're also asking questions, is this a technical question or is this a tactical question? So in a fundamental class, most everything should be technical. We're learning how to move our body for the first time, especially if you're like white to blue or even early blue. That's more on the technical side. When you're like mid blue, purple and above, we're starting to get into like what ifs, like setups. What if they do this? When do I use it? Like attack by combination, things like that. And that's going to be kind of like your intermediary step to your advanced class. We're talking about kind of almost like esoteric conceptual jiu-jitsu. One of my favorite things to do, though, is I love fundamental jiu-jitsu. I still do the same moves from white to blue to this day as a black belt. The difference is I know more details than I did before, and I know when to use them now. That's the only difference. The moves haven't changed. You don't need a lot. So it's advanced. It's like advanced basics, which sounds crazy. But you don't need a lot of moves to be functional as a jiu-jitsu practitioner. You just need to be good at them and know when to use them. And that's timing. And either you have to discover that for yourself by sparring or doing light play and kind of playing through scenarios, or you make flow charts. And that's something that I've been doing a lot as an instructor, is writing flow charts in my head. Like, if the opponent does this, I do this. And that kind of really kind of helps me kind of think about the game as a whole. But that was, another really great question. So are there any other questions about anything else we did today? Whether it's the peace out, close the gap to the T position, the arm bar, the solo drills we did to kind of help our arm bar. It could be technical or tactical questions. Does not bother me. I love that everyone is being very involved today. That kind of makes it more fun for me. I had a pleasure on Wednesday of teaching a Zoom class for the Academy in Minnesota, and I had the Greg Nelson in my class, which was
super nerve-wracking, but he was the best student. And this is someone who's like a 4-stripe black belt. So I'm just saying, great teachers are usually the best students. So we can all get better, even if it's fundamentals. So if there are no other questions, I want to just a quick announcement. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share the video. That kind of helps me out a little bit. And then if you would like to support the channel, consider becoming a patron on Patreon. That kind of helps me put out more content and kind of support me through this kind of time. I am also available for private Zoom one-on-one lessons. If you're interested, you can write in the comment section or you can message me directly, whatever works best for you. I want to say thank you guys so much for joining me on Saturday morning for BJJ Fundamentals. Same time, same place next week, next Saturday. So I'm trying to keep this as a kind of pretty standard schedule. Everyone, you have a wonderful Mother's Day. And remember, drillers make killers.